After struggling with Amazon's reviewing policy, I finally managed to get this review in. Because I needed to leave one for such a great read, that's how fun the book was to me. Reading this book hit a little home to me. Since I live around Northwest Indiana and know some, and actually been to some of the locations like South Bend, Indiana and Indianapolis, I related a lot and understood Sergei's struggle, especially with the youngsters from the urban concrete jungle of Chicago. As a Hispanic child in the 90s, I know such kids and grew up in such an environment. I also enjoyed the book's creative narrative. There are instances where Sergei will mention something intriguing and elaborate on it in a flashback style. These instances are frequent, brief, and short, and fun, and they never take you out of the loop of what's going on. It's like a real conversation with a friend who's telling you a story. They talk about the topic, meander somewhere else for one moment to shed some light, and come right back to the story for your benefit. The book was fun, as I already explained. It really is as advertised, a fish out of water scenario. Man from former USSR dropped into a brand new strange world. I wished we could have read a little bit more, not asking for a whole new book. That's be okay though. If you were going to release one, I'd buy it. But just an epilogue in Ukraine, how his family reacted to their boy coming back home with so much moolah. And did Sergei spend it all on vodka? Or did he buy that Soviet car? How his old friends reacted to his experience. Did they have a million questions? Did Sergei meet Michael Jackson? Did he have a summer romance? Well, that's all I can say. Just more Sergei. Thanks for the read. Well worth the price and time.
This is not the book to read if your goal is to understand, for example, the changes between diplomatic relations between the US and the USSR cis. Without a doubt, the fall of the USSR, regardless of how you interpret it, impacted the lives of ex-Soviet citizens, with each individual having a different story to tell from the experience. If reading history is not your thing, but you still want an idea of what ex-Soviet states in the 1990s was like, I highly recommend the film Brat, or Brother in English. This book contains the story of 1 out of 290+ million Soviet citizens who were thrown into a new world overnight, and Sergei was thrown into many, a Ukraine that was undergoing Washington's shock therapy. And in the belly of the imperialist beast, Sergei worked with children from underprivileged backgrounds, but also made friends from the upper strata of the petty bourgeoisie out in the middle of nowhere. I guess we could say they were Amerikanskie kulaki. Comrade Sergei probably heard all about the wealth disparity in the United States when he was a Soviet schoolboy, but he probably couldn't fathom how class and racial divides in the US impacted people. And the layers of cultural shock he was on can be pretty interesting and, at times, hilarious. How enjoyable was the read? Let's put it this way, I personally disagree with Sergei on certain issues. I do not agree with Sergei's evaluation of Stalin and his interpretation of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and I'm sure communists reading his book will think similarly. I personally believe Khrushchev and Brezhnev were revisionists, if whoever reading is curious, though his views are quite aligned with the mainstream interpretation in the West, so the average reader probably won't have any problem with it. But despite all of this, I still think Comrade Sergei's book was an excellent read, and I always look forward to new videos on his YouTube channel, The Ushanka Show.
I'm a fan of the author's YouTube program, Ushanka Show, and it was interesting to read about his first trip to America. I actually didn't want the book to end. 1995 was a year of contrasts for Sergei. Life in America was very different from life in post-Soviet Ukraine, which was suffering from hyperinflation, 10,000% in 1993. The pay in America was good, but the work conditions were less than luxurious. The work was all the more exhausting because of the energy it took to become proficient in the English language and learn all the new do's and don'ts. For example, do wear deodorant and don't wear a Speedo banana hammock. As an immigrant in Europe, I can definitely attest to how exhausting the first months and years in a new country can be. Sergei was sometimes homesick that summer and reminisced about his childhood. For example, remembering what a treat it was to get bananas for his birthday. And when he felt discouraged, he reminded himself of the much bigger struggles his grandfather went through during World War II. His grandfather was a POW lucky to escape alive, but considered a traitor for being caught at all. The stories about his grandfather were a particularly compelling part of the book. The book was filled with interesting anecdotes. They taught me a fair amount about Ukrainian life and culture, but they also made me smile and laugh, and simply feel glad to have made his acquaintance page by page, chapter by chapter. The book is available on Kindle for only $3.99. Why not check it out?
Even if you're unaware of Sergei Sputnikoff's works on YouTube, you too can enjoy an entertaining and humorous fish-out-of-water tale about a former Soviet citizen's first journey to the USA, replete with cultural gaffes, camaraderie, and discovery. Examples of such discoveries is the realization that the Amish are more than just a plot device in the film Witness, and that one should, with few exceptions, never ever wear a Speedo in North America. As Rafe Fiennes says in Strange Days, one man's mundane existence is another man's technicolor, and Mr. Sputnikoff's observations and analyses from a former Soviet eye provides an interesting glimpse through a cultural lens that is both enlightening, entertaining, and, in my opinion, historically important for the sake of posterity. As a man that rarely posts written reviews, I can wholeheartedly recommend this book to anyone that is a fan of the man behind the Ushanka Show. Soviet history, intercultural exchanges, or just plain fun and humorous stories. I wished it was even lengthier, and I would long for more tales. Keep up the good work, comrade.
Discovered Comrade Sergei's Ushanka Show on YouTube after watching HBO's Chernobyl and searching for additional information about that disaster. Sergei has fascinating stories about living not very far from Chernobyl when it happened, and all of his other stories about life in the USSR are also quite interesting. As a child of the 80s, the Cold War was a huge part of our popular culture. The Soviets were the default bad guys in 80s action movies, and you developed a certain almost macabre fascination with the other side. So it is very interesting all these years later to finally satisfy some of that curiosity about how life was for the ordinary people there. The book is humorous and insightful. If you watch the Ushanka Show, you will certainly want to get this book, and I challenge you to not read it in Sergei's voice. It is impossible.
This book is a real page-turner. Once I started, I could hardly put it down. I really liked the frank and insightful observations of America in the mid-1990s offered by this foreigner from Eastern Europe. The story was told in an engaging way that carries you along, never ceasing to be interesting. You can really identify with the author as he conveys in a breezy but evocative way the joys, surprises, and discomforts he experienced during that summer and autumn spent in America. As he often compares life in the U.S. with life in Russia and Ukraine, you gain insights into those countries as well, both during and after the Soviet period. Most of all, I enjoyed his dry sense of humor, which made reading the book a very pleasurable experience.
I just finished reading American Diaries 1995, Adventures of a Russian Student in Michigan, and I cannot express enough how much I enjoyed this captivating memoir. The author's journey of cultural exchange and personal growth is a heartwarming and inspiring tale that left me feeling both enlightened and uplifted. The book chronicles the real-life experiences of a Russian student as they embark on a life-changing adventure in Michigan, USA. Through their detailed diary entries, the author beautifully captures the challenges and triumphs of adjusting to a new culture, language, and way of life. It was fascinating to witness their gradual assimilation into American society while still holding on to their unique Russian identity. One of the most striking aspects of this book is the author's candid and introspective writing style. Their emotional honesty allows readers to connect deeply with their feelings, struggles, and joys. It's evident that every word was written from the heart, making the narrative feel genuine and authentic. Beyond the personal experiences, American Diaries 1995 offers readers a powerful lesson in cultural understanding and empathy. The book sheds light on the importance of embracing diversity and appreciating the richness that different cultures bring to our lives. I found myself reflecting on my own interactions with people from various backgrounds and striving to be more open-minded and compassionate. Furthermore, the author's sense of adventure and willingness to step outside their comfort zone is truly commendable. From exploring Michigan's breathtaking landscapes to immersing themselves in local traditions and festivities, their experiences are nothing nothing short of awe-inspiring. As a reader, I appreciated the smooth flow of the narrative, which made it difficult to put the book down. Each chapter was filled with anticipation and left me eagerly awaiting the next phase of the author's journey. Additionally, the inclusion of photographs from the actual time period allowed me to visualize the settings and further connected me to the story. In conclusion, American Diaries, 1995, Adventures of a Russian Student in Michigan is an exceptional memoir that blends cultural exploration, personal growth, and unforgettable experiences. It is a book that will stay with me for a long time, reminding me of the boundless potential that lies in the connections we make with people from different walks of life. I wholeheartedly recommend this book to anyone seeking inspiration, cultural enlightenment, and a touch of wanderlust. Kudos to the author for sharing their incredible journey with the world.
Personal and relatable book on the experience of a 24-year-old Ukrainian getting a guest job in the U.S. If you like the book, watch his Ushanka Show channel on YouTube. Easy read, the kind of book that can be read in one sitting. I no longer have the focus I had 2 to 3 decades ago before internet-fueled short attention span. My hat is off to Sergei, venturing into an unknown country with only rudimentary English, no car, no cell phone, no internet. Few people would be brave enough to have such a venture unless they are really desperate. Sergei's life in Ukraine was bleak and with no prospects, but it didn't seem that desperate to me. I had a somewhat similar experience, but not by choice. When I was 14, my parents and I immigrated to the U.S. just as the communist regime in Romania fell. That was something that came as a shock to everyone. Though people clearly saw that it was ailing and unlikely to outlast the dictator's personal rule was seen as pretty solid. Solid enough that, as in Sergei's experience, people were afraid to speak up their minds in public, only free to voice one's true opinion to family and close friends. I haven't personally experienced the bleak decade that followed the end of communism, but from friends left behind in Romania, I hear similar stories to Sergei's, about how corrupt and immiserating life was. Ukraine sounds like it was worse than Warsaw Pact countries. To most young adults in Eastern Europe in the 90s, with precious few exceptions, such as talented programmers once the internet became available, the only opportunities lay westward. Go west, young man, like Sergei. Most didn't think of emigrating for good, just working for a few years, building a nest egg, then moving back to one's native country.
Born in Ukraine in 1971, Comrade Sergei, as he has come to be known on his English YouTube channel, tells the story of his chase for the almighty dollar after the fall of the Soviet Union. Making a meager $20 per month as an engineer in the newly emerging capitalist country, he found himself smuggling goods into former Soviet satellites and dealing in counterfeit goods, not as some sort of master criminal, but just a guy trying to make a better life for himself. Lucky for him, he learned how to develop film and was able to use it to get a ticket to the U.S. in a Michigan summer camp for Chicago's intercity youth in 1995. What did he think of this land of opportunity as a young man? You'll have to read to find out. So grab yourself a tomato juice in a can, put on your Levi's and Adidas shoes, and don't you dare put honey on your chicken nuggets. I like that though. Laughing face, pig pen, this here's rubber duck. Looks like we got ourselves a good book. And make sure to subscribe to his Ushanka Show YouTube channel to learn all about growing up in the USSR.
I first came to know of Comrade Sergei's existence through his YouTube channel Ushanka Show. After watching many of his videos and hearing his unique experiences and perspectives, I had to buy his book. Comrade Sergei's experiences are definitely an interesting read and are worth your time and money. Go to his website, support him on Patreon.
Suspenseful spy novel about a Soviet double agent infiltrating the government. Just kidding, a fun read about our naive comrade Sergei's transplant from Ukraine to Michigan. Check out his YouTube channel Ushanka Show, and if you like the videos you will probably like the book. I latched onto his channel as a lover of history and travel, and being that we're close in age and have the same dry, witty humor. He spent about half his life in Ukraine and half in Michigan, USA, so his videos show the contrast between the two worlds, usually with humor. I wanted to put long and boring as the review headline, but didn't want to scare anyone away. That's an inside joke to his channel followers. Spasibo for writing this book, comrade, and for all your videos.
There are two big factors that make you not want to put this book down even after you finish it. Sergei has lived a unique, fascinating, eventful, adventurous life, and he is a very good writer, making you feel like you're there with him through his experiences. Even more amazing when you remember English is his third language. You'd never guess if you didn't know. I highly recommend you buy both this and his next book together. When you finish this one, you'll want to start on his next book right away. I'm very glad I did. This is kind of the other side of the coin from his Ushanka Show YouTube channel. Instead of being about the USSR, it's mainly about his first experience of life in the US, learning and adjusting from his life in the USSR, Ukraine. There's also aspects of Soviet-Ukrainian life, giving us the background of his journey here, as well as a comparison with life in the US. Through him, we get to experience the US for the first time as a foreigner. But that brief description doesn't do it justice. Now, I eagerly await his upcoming American Diaries 1997.